My parents were immigrants from India. They moved to London in the mid-50s. They were one of the first Indian families from Punjab to come and move to the North London area.
From where
Uh,
again?
the North London, they came from Punjab, the north of India.
Okay. Okay.
So they're from the Punjab region. I think what was interesting is they moved 8 years after the bloody partition of 1947, when India was divided and became India and Pakistan, and the British left India where they had ruled. And I think that's quite vital to the story in a way, because I remember when my mum telling me when she arrived in England how disappointed she was because they had been ruled by the British. They had such a image of the British, and the reality was England was very cold, and not just in the weather, the people were very cold. And there was a reminder to the immigrants coming from abroad, especially from at that time from India, which was they were not welcome and they were not wanted. So I grew up in London. I was born in 1966. And I grew up at a time in London where there was a lot of anxiety on both sides. So there was a general influx of immigrants from the West Indies, from India. And then in the mid-70s, Idi Amin kicked all the Indians out of Uganda. And these people who left Uganda had businesses, they had livelihoods, and they were just told to leave. And they just left. And a lot of them came to London. And a lot of them, they were not Punjabis, they were Gujaratis, which is a different population. They live in a different area, come from a different area in India. And a lot of them actually moved into our area, maybe sort of the London area. And I think this almost heightened the anxiety for the majority.
Let me make sure I get this. So your parents were immigrated to London, and they did this by choice.
Yes.
Okay, so they immigrated and they discovered that the Londoners were much colder than they had thought. They thought in a way they were coming to a sort of a homeland because they had been raised under British rule. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And instead of coming to a homeland, they discovered they were foreigners.
Exactly.
Okay, so meanwhile, Idi Amin, is that who kicked them out of Uganda? Yes, I remember the rule of Idi Amin. Yes, and I remember when that happened. So he kicked out all of these Indians. And so now we have this other group of people who had been raised in Uganda who had thought that was their homeland, even though they were. So now we have these two separate groups of Indians from different places who either were forced or voluntarily came into this neighborhood in London. Is that what you're
saying? Absolutely. And I just wanted to say as well that, when I say my parents voluntarily came, I think it is true of a lot of immigrant stories. They came to better their lives. They came because they knew that the education system was good in England. They came for, I suppose, to future-proof their children's life. But it is interesting, even as I'm telling you now, because you have these Punjabi immigrants, you had immigrants from people who were kicked out of Uganda, you had people from Pakistan. And what was interesting was for the indigenous population, the majority population, they had no idea about the diversity within those groups.
Now, majority population, you mean Londoners?
What the white Londoners, yes.
Yeah, white population. Okay.
So they had no idea what the difference was between a Bangladeshi, a Pakistani, an Indian, or somebody who was kicked out of Uganda. And so there was a racial slur that was used at that time, which was called Paki.
Paki?
Paki, P-A-K-I, which is short for Pakistani.
Right.
But it was a very negative term.